All in the For those of you who came in late, we're singing 509 is our song of encouragement. And just to mention one thing, please pray for all of our military people. Nancy is over in that area, so please keep Nancy in your prayers. Jahada's in South Africa. She's in an embassy duty. I think she's not seeing embassy duty. I think that's the only reason she's there, but she's having a great time. Please remember all of our military people.
Good evening. Glad to have everyone out here this evening. We're going to start with the Men's Work Day, Saturday, March 21st, 9 a.m. right here at the building. A Men's Work Day will be here at the building preparing for our Men's Day, which I'll be announcing later, but I'll mention it now. That's what we're going to do. We're going to get the building all spiffied and nice and polished and shined for that. Reminder, daylight saving time. Turn your clocks forward. Very good. No, forward, Woodrow. The other backwards. The other backwards. So for the Ladies' Day that's coming up for Manning, I wrote it down, so I want to say that now so I don't forget it. So the time will be announced later, but there will be 2 cars going, and you guys will be meeting here at the building, and Sheila will be giving you a time that you guys will be leaving on that particular morning. But 2 cars right now are going to be leaving from the building. There's a plan for 2 cars to be leaving for you guys' Ladies' Day in Manning. 314 is Pie Day, 3.14. So, right here at the building, we're going to have a Pie Day gathering, get-together, celebration. Bring pies. That could be a shepherd's pie, pot pie, any kind of pie. Or it could be a dessert pie. But there's going to be a Pie Day right here at the building, 3/14, March the 14th. That's Saturday. So mark that on your calendars. Okay, those are the ones I had that weren't on the midweek. Hope you guys are getting the midweek. I'm going to highlight some of those briefly and quickly. Continue to pray for Robert, as you guys know, and his sister Jeanette. You know, Robert's been doing up and down, but he's doing a little bit better, moving around, walking, taking a few steps. Continue to pray for Angie, and you know that she's going through her radiation treatment. Pray for her, James, Belinda, as well as Olita. Continue to pray for Woodrow as he continues his testing. He made that announcement, so please, please, please continue to pray for him. You guys got a chance. Did everyone get an opportunity to meet Taj and his family? Good job. Yeah, just keep Taj and his family in your prayers. We're looking forward to making a decision on that. But we enjoyed his message on Sunday, as well as his Devo. And we appreciate you guys and your questions. He did a really good job with that. Continue to keep Harry and Sheila in your prayers. They'll be traveling to San Antonio, Texas for their grandson's wedding. You doing the wedding? Ah, man. Okay, my bad. I was excited there for a minute. Yeah, I do. I like to see y'all do things. Oh, okay. Well, at least he's a part of it, guys. I can be excited about that. Y'all was out to hate on me. And our thank yous go to everyone who participated in planning and otherwise participated in Destiny's baby shower. We want to thank you guys for that, as well as those who participated in the Bible Bowl. That was a roaring success. Is John Paul here? I didn't see him. Oh, he's here. Your archaeology class will be 4:30, people, on the 8th. March 8th, archaeology class, right here at the building, 4:30 to 5:30. Goat Hill Road, Church of Christ, Annual Men's Day. That will be on the that was the 14th as well. Okay, that's the 14th, Gold Hill Road, Church of Christ, Men's Day. You know, we do that annually. More information, please see Harry, but mark your calendars. That's coming up soon. The 14th, guys, Gold Hill Road's Church of Christ, Men's Day on the 14th. Ladies' Bible class on the 16th. At 10 a.m. right here at the building. That's the 16th. Ladies' Bible class right here at the building. Wow, we got a lot going on the 21st. Men's fellowship breakfast. Are we going to do that at the building? Did we say we were going to do that here? Are we going to leave there and come here? Anyway, men's fellowship breakfast is still on for the 21st. That's going to be at Shoney's at 8 a.m. unless we change it. I know we talked about that, but I don't remember what the final was on that. Now back to our Men's Day, April 18th, right here at the Plaza Church building. The theme will be Act Like Men. Please, 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 if you haven't already, mark your calendars to be here, men, and bring some other men with you, because last time, guys who weren't members of the congregation had a really good time. Bring them on out. Don't forget to clean out your mailboxes. We've announced that one before as well. And I think that's it. That's enough, isn't it? Oh, I thought that was enough. Everybody, and what time will it be? Cece? Cece, is Pie Day for everyone? And what time? 12 o'clock. So Pie Day is for everyone to bring pies, any kind of pie, as long as it's a pie. It could be a pizza pie, any kind of pie. Just come here at 12 o'clock, and we're going to celebrate 3.14, Pie Day, for those of you who don't know what Pie Day is. It's a geometrical term. I didn't like geometry, by the way, so I won't be. Kidding, it's a jokey joke. Hey, I'm with you on that. Just don't like geometry. Just had to be honest about that. I apologize. Let's have a word of prayer. Almighty God in heaven, we are indeed grateful for your son, Jesus, first of all, Father, for taking our place and dying so that we would have a hope that if we're faithful, we have that opportunity to live forever with you. There's much turmoil in the world, as it almost always is, Father, but we thank you for being the God who's in control of it all and who's protecting us no matter what's going on around us. But we still probably want to pray for peace. We want to pray for strong leadership and minds who will come together, come to resolutions that don't involve conflict. But even if it does involve conflict, Father, that it will be resolved quickly in a manner that will lead to the least amount of lives lost. I want to pray for those families who've lost loved ones already. I want to pray for our military, all of men and women in uniform, as well as those who also are members of the other governmental bodies that operate in those areas in secret. We know, oh God, that they perform a mighty work that needs to be done to keep us all protected and keep us safe. So we pray that they're safe, Father. We pray that you put your hand of protection around them and return them back home to their families safely. As we go into our Bible class tonight, we pray that our hearts and our minds are tuned to the lesson, stayed on you, and focused on what we can do each and every day to mold ourselves and change ourselves to be more like Jesus. We pray all these things in his name. Amen.
Okay. Danny gave me an earworm. Do you guys know what an earworm is? It's like that when you get like a song in your head and it just repeats and over and over. And normally it's not like the whole song, it's like one small segment of the song. Except in this case, it was a Bible verse. And it wasn't even the one he was quoting. So I got to thinking about what he was talking about when he was, if you guys were at Danny's class on Sunday, and he was talking about how God gives growth. And he mentioned that in the context of Genesis chapter 2. But that's not what I was thinking of. I was thinking about what Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, when he talks about Paul watering and giving, and Paul planting, Apollos watering, God gives growth. Yes, had to spit it out there. And it just got in my head over and over again, where I've been thinking about it for probably the last 3 days. And this morning, as I was looking through my email, I got a notification from Heart to Heart reminding me that my article is coming up and due in the next month. And so I thought, what a perfect thing to write about. So today I wrote a devotional for Heart to Heart that I would like to share with you all, which I think is very apt in what Danny was saying on Sunday. In Genesis 1, the Bible begins with a powerful declaration. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The author, coming out strong, tells the reader in such a simple phrase who God is and what he has done. Everything that follows is reinforcing that statement. When chaos covers the deep, God brought order. When darkness reigned, God spoke light. When the earth was formless, God filled it with beauty and purpose. The very act of creation testifies nothing God did was not accidental, but intentional acts done with care. However, the story does not stop with oceans, stars, and land. It crescendos into something much more personal found in 126. Let us create man in our image after our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fish and the sea and the birds and the heavens, and over all the livestock and over all the earth and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. The creating of the heavens and the earth did not just make the world, he made a people who reflect him. As image bearers, we have a responsibility to take care of God's creation, specifically as pertains to the image of Christ. Paul reminds us in such, when he speaks of who we are in God's vineyard, by saying, and this is where the earworm comes into play, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave growth. And as it goes on to say, we are all God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building. We as Christians might labor differently, but we do so remembering that every act of obedience is a seed planted in faith and trust, knowing God is still working towards the good of his creation. After all, the author of life, when he was finished, he looked at his creation and saw that it was very good. My prayer for you today is this: live in a way that makes his image visible. Strive to reflect the good he has placed within you, and trust that God is using your faithful obedience to shine his light through the world. So hopefully, someone will read this and be inspired, and hopefully, for the first time in a long time, pick up the Bible knowing that my words are just a mere reflection of his, and that there's something more profound that starts in the beginning of Genesis and ends with I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and end. And the best thing you could do is follow him. If you find yourself struggling, if you'd like to respond to these words in any way, feel free to come forward as we're led in song.
I will sing the story of the Christ who died for me. How he left his home in glory for the cross of Calvary. Yes, I'll sing the wondrous story of the Christ.
larger crowd today. Some of you weren't here the last few weeks, which is good. I heard you all had a good time doing your Bible Bowl. I'm drawing a blank on what it was. I wanted to say Bible study, and I was like, nope, not coming out. I'm sure there probably was a lot of that going on too. And you didn't win, but you had fun. You did win. Oh, okay. Everybody's a winner. But there was fellowship, there was worship, there was community, and it was definitely a good thing. But for those of you who've been missing for the last few weeks, we're talking about ethics and morals. We kind of moved into this new segment on what the Bible teaches us on how, about things that we don't necessarily know the answer to. As I said, when I first started the preamble to this lesson, leading up to there are things that Christians develop as right or wrong, but the Bible really doesn't give a clear answer on those things. And so part of that is trying to figure out what the answer to those things might be, or maybe how we might develop answers to those questions. If you are been coming, Harry and I for the last year have been doing tough things at St. Andrew's Church of Christ once a month, hot topics in the church, and really exploring what the Bible actually has to say about them. And this month I will be doing the one on alcohol. And so I encourage all of you to come to that. I don't know if everybody's welcome to come. I don't know if it's just men only. Yeah, the men are welcome to come, but I also want you to know if you can't come, I will be doing it as part of this series. So at the very least, you will get to hear it here, even though it's not one of the ones I listed here. And how we might decide what the actual answer is. For the example, if I ask you guys, is it okay for you to drink? How many of you would say yes? How many of you would say no? All right? I have 3 yeses and 3 no's. How many don't actually know the answer? That's another 3. No, I'm going to say yes. Okay. Yeah. So, well, that's one of the things that I will talk about. I don't actually need an answer. I will cover that extensively, but people do have different opinions on that, and I have found, especially in the Church of Christ, that people fall into one of 2 opinions, and there really is no between in those opinions. It is okay as long as you don't get drunk, or it is not okay at all. I've never met anybody in the between those things, or anybody who said that you can do whatever you want. I think most Christians would disagree on that, but I'm sure there's probably someone out there. Part of that is kind of determining how you get your code in the first place, and I gave the example of Ben Franklin, the not-so-ethical person who did have a very interesting ethical code, especially when it came to the answering these 2 questions every day. What good shall I do today? And what good have I done today? And he kind of looked at his life to determine if he was on the right path. And so he developed a system that kind of looked something like this. Are you looking towards temperance or order or futility or industry or chastity, or especially a very important one, humility? He was a theist, and I'm not going to talk too much about what a theist is, but basically he believed in God, but not really a Christian. I don't think he called himself a Christian. He was mostly a theist. Jesus was certainly a way to God, but maybe not the only way to God, or reflecting the morals ideas of Socrates. So, what's our code? Well, how do you get that code? Do you develop that code by following the law? For most people, that's what it tends to be. As long as I follow the law, I am doing the right thing. How many of you are familiar with, no, I'm going to butcher his name, so I'm not going to ask. A while ago, there was a mayor in Washington, D.C. I think his name was Marion Barry? Yes, okay. And he apparently did something that was very, very highly unethical. And he argued that because it wasn't illegal, it was okay for him to do. And so most people would look at that and they would say, no. Just because the law might allow something, it does not make that thing good. So we understand that maybe the law is not enough. In fact, we know that the law was not even enough as a standard for judgment because the law would only do one thing, and that would be, it would tell you how much of a sinner you are. And it didn't matter if you were a little sinner or a great sinner, it just only told you that you were a sinner and that there needed to be something a little bit more. And so that's where we as Christians have kind of developed this holiness code on what it means to be a good Christian, or to reflect what Moses writes in Leviticus chapter 11, be holy as I am holy, quoting God. Moses writes it, but he's quoting God here. So last week we kind of talked about the framework using Paul, a letter to the church at 1 Corinthians, where these different questions are asked of Paul, and Paul attempts to answer them, even though they themselves are not really based on the teachings of Jesus. And I think that's where a lot of Christians tend to fall is, what did Jesus say about this particular issue? Well, did Jesus talk about everything? Nope. So it's a good thing that we have Paul's 10 letters, because he recognized that the early church struggled with things like this. So when Paul answers the question, is it good for a man not to touch a woman? Why does Paul answer this question? Or why does he address this question? Because someone asked it. And if someone asked it, it is probably because someone believed, at least on some point, that the answer is it is good for a man not to touch a woman, especially in a place like Corinth, where sexual sins were very prominent. Or even more to the point, we recognize that idols are a bad thing. The Old Testament speaks quite against the topic of idols, and especially worship of idols. But most of the meat that the local everyday person probably would have got was from a temple that was sacrificed to an idol. And so when the question comes up is, okay, well, my livelihood, the ability for me to eat, is largely coming from this place that we recognize is a bad place. What am I supposed to do about that? Am I supposed to go broke now feeding myself? Or am I supposed to give up meat altogether? Some Christians do believe you have to give up meat. And so that's one of the reasons Paul addresses this particular question. And so we're still kind of using this framework of both the Old Testament and the New Testament to answer these questions. And though we don't have the same questions that they necessarily have today, there was a big question that is not covered in the Bible, but was a very prominent question that was asked in around 100 AD, that was finally decided by, I think it was by Constantine, or at least in the time of Constantine, so 200 years later, about an issue in the church, and that is, well, we have this very, very high infant mortality rate. Do we need to baptize babies? And now, what did they decide? They decided, yes, you do need to baptize babies. Now, that probably deserves its own framework, and maybe that's not a great example of something, because we don't baptize babies in this church. But there are churches that do, and churches do it, especially the Catholic Church, because of that question was asked 1900 years ago due to a very specific issue that almost no longer applies today. But we do have things that are important, especially in the year 2025. Discovering most of the world. There is very few corners of the earth that have not been discovered at this point, unless you want to go about a mile down deep in the ocean. And I bet you're probably not finding any people down there. And they kind of boil down to the subjects that I brought up. Is it all right to have an abortion? What if I can't have kids? Does that make me less of a Christian? Should I leave my spouse if they commit adultery? Well, certainly you are allowed to leave your spouse if they commit adultery, but that's a different question, isn't it? Should you if they do? Can I be a part of a political party? Should the church be concerned with social justice? This one I think has been coming up more and more prominently in the last 10 years. Is wartime an acceptable time to kill someone? Is it ever an acceptable time to kill someone? Are there any circumstances that might say it's okay for me to kill someone, even if it means I'm just defending myself? Revelation, all liars go to hell. Okay, well, what defines someone as a liar? Anytime someone lies, are they a liar? Why am I afraid of death, knowing that I will go to heaven? I actually don't have a good answer to this one. I have an answer for all of them except that one. If anyone's got a good one for this, I'd love to hear it. And that's, what was it, Roosevelt? The only thing we have to fear is fear itself, or the idea of just the unknown. Did God really make me this way? Or what are my responsibilities to God's creation? We've been talking a lot about that as this church, especially as people who needs more workers. Genesis chapter 1, as we just read, God gives 2 commands to his creation. Those commands are to be fruitful and multiply. That's number 1. It's kind of a 2-parter. And the other one is to take care of the earth. Well, what does it mean to take care of? And what is my particular responsibility to that? Paul addresses this a little bit more when he talks about the gifts in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Some of these things are easy. Some of these things are positive instructions, such as what I said, Genesis 1:28. And some of them are negative instructions, such as do not do this. So this is how I wish everything was in life. Here's a list. You can do this. You cannot do this. Everything else you're fine with. Or maybe you're not fine with. And I think that would be really, really easy, and I think I would also hate it very, very much. But negative instructions, you may surely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat it, you shall die. So not only do we see that there are positive instructions and negative instructions, but there are positive consequences, and there are negative consequences for obedience and disobedience. So we have the do's and don'ts that are often reinforced by law or reinforced by guidelines, such as the 10 Commandments. Everything, what is there? I think there's like 600 and something laws in the book in the Old Testament. 631? I know it's a lot. Oh, good. Is that a Bible trivia question? Awesome. 630 laws in the law of Moses that are really just simplified into 10 commandments, with one of those being the first commandment with a promise. Or Jesus had another way to really kind of sum up all of that. He said all the law kind of falls on 2 things. Yeah. If you're doing those 2 things, I mean, what problems do you got in life? No, yeah, you're right. He did say that. I had that earworm going at that point.
John Paul, but going back to you saying what we don't have the answers, I do believe we have the answers.
I'm not saying that we don't have the answers. I'm just saying that.
Scripture.
Yeah.
The Bible says, Peter writes there, says God has given
Mm-hmm.
And so if we look at it, we can see he gives us examples, he gives us commands, he gives us instructions.
And that's a lot of what I'm going to be doing, Harry, is I'm going to be looking at what Scripture says and how we can, even though that they're not direct answers, that we can extrapolate answers from them. But you're getting a kind of ahead of where I'm going here, which is fine. I don't mind. I don't want this to be. I'm expecting a lot of discussion in this class, especially because a lot of these things are going to, I hope, hit home to some people, especially as we talk about maybe the life and death and killing one, as this being a very military-minded church. I am 95% sure I have never killed anybody. And some of you are like, what? Aren't you 100% sure? And the only reason I'm not 100% sure is because I know that I have fired my weapon at a person. I'm pretty sure I didn't hit that person because they were far away, but that doesn't mean I didn't. And so it's something that, I always wondered about in the moment. Would I ever be able to do this? You know how I figured out if I'm the kind of person who could do this? Is when somebody shot at me. I found out very, very quickly what kind of person I was in that particular moment. But, a lot of times we're not really faced with those moments. We're put in hypothetical situations, or we sit behind keyboards, or we read or watch what's going on in the news, and we get very passionate about these things. So the Bible is kind of like finding these answers through what we already have, either through the teachings of Jesus, through the laws of Moses, through the wisdom literature. I think a lot of Christians ignore the wisdom literature and the history books of the Old Testament, but there's a lot of really good teaching tools in those books, especially in the way that we look at forgiveness, especially in the way we look at repentance, especially in the way that we look at humbling ourselves as people. David spends a lot of time humbling himself in his Psalms. Having that right kind of attitude, looking at what the prophets taught to the people that they were supposed to talk to, echoed in one of my favorite my favorite Old Testament saying, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your might." So, some of those things are quite easy. But as Harry's going to go on to, as Harry says, that we might have the answers, but finding those answers are a little bit hard, especially when we understand that the Bible calls us to obedience. But if we could be perfectly obedient, then we really wouldn't need Christ in the first place. Yes, go ahead, Harry. No, I'm getting ready to switch gears, so you go.
My problem with this is that we go back to the Old Testament and we say, if we're not doing these things. Now, yes, we're going to sin, but I think people come to the point of grace and utilize to commit sin because of grace. Okay?
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Can you?
I am not doing this, okay?
Okay.
Okay, and we talk about the Old Testament, but Jesus expounds on the Old Testament's law. He says killing someone.
Mm-hmm.
We think of killing someone, physically killing someone, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus says, if you hate your brother, what have you done?
Mm.
You have killed him, okay? So we can come back and say, because we're no longer under the law, we
So
can live
now we're talking about the hard things.
okay, but that's what I'm saying. If we go back to it, to me, in my reading and coming to understanding the Bible, back in the old law, they couldn't fulfill the old law.
Sure.
Okay, that's why God sent Christ, because of grace.
All right.
But then we come back under grace, like Paul said in Romans chapter 6. Shall we continue in sin that grace may be abound? God forbid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So we live, and that's why I think the world, I look at the world today and the families and saying, I believe in God, I'm doing what's right, I think I'm doing what's right, but then being Christ-like is for following Christ, it's just being and trying your best, if you live obedient to Christ. Sure, you're going to fall short.
Yeah.
But if we come back and says to the point where we are now, the Bible is very clear on certain things, okay?
Okay.
Forgiveness. We talk about that over and over and over again,
Sure.
okay? What does he say? Paul expounded on that.
All right.
We,
Can I cut you off for a second, Harry? And it's not that I don't disagree with what you're saying. It's that there is grace. Yeah, we live under grace. But if we're looking towards good living, I mean, a lot of that is understanding what is correct and what's not correct. In Jesus' time, Jesus gives the example of murder, and he gives the example of murder and hatred going hand in hand. And I'm willing to bet most of his audience, when they heard those words, would never have equated those two things as being exactly the same thing. And Jesus himself isn't necessarily saying they're the one same thing, that often that one leads to the other one. And for most of people, that would have been a very hard thing to hear. For a lot of Christians, they struggle with it because, well, I'm sure every Christian in this room can say that I've never killed somebody. I am 99% positive all of you have at one point thought that you hated somebody. Would you say that's fair? And under the Old Testament law, according to Jesus, that you would be guilty of that particular sin, even though, according to the Old Testament law, you would not be disciplined in the punishment for murder or the consequence of murder according to the Old Testament law as it pertains to earthly justice.
let me share something with you. I get on the same thing. We were at Shoney's for breakfast.
Yes.
And one individual, guy, we know professes he's a member of the Lord's body.
Mm-hmm.
He asked us, can we get together and fellowship without discussing Christ? And we talk about basically about women. That's what he was leading it up to. He led it up to it saying, talking about looking at nice women.
Okay.
Now he said that. Now, I got some brothers right here who testified, and he said that right there while he was there. Okay? Woodrow was there. And this is the stuff that to me bothers me, okay, that we talk about following Christ, but we can make comments like that. Okay? And so we think about living under grace, that means I can say what I want to say. Okay? And so therefore, because I'm under grace, then it really doesn't.
And I would say that if you're living under grace, those are probably things that you should avoid. You should avoid not just, you should avoid not dressing like that, not having your kids dress up provocatively, or engaging in type of any video stuff like that. But that's one of those things where we can look at it and we could say it's wrong. We could say it's wrong because we can easily attribute it to lust.
And going back,
Yeah.
we were talking about hot topics.
Yeah.
That's my topic is going to be about pornography.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I'm studying up on pornography, about statistics about pornography. I'm getting off some, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit. But because of it's a secret sin, it's only most of the times between that individual and God.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we know what God says, okay, is telling us, then going back to the Old Testament, we saw what happened. David lusted, okay. Judah had an affair with his daughter-in-law, which he was thinking was a prostitute. So we see all these examples of stuff that we see here. So John Paul, so that means to us, then as long as between me and no one in the congregation knows what I'm doing, then God doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But if God is telling me to say, if I look upon a woman lustfully, I have committed adultery.
Okay.
Okay? So if we go
Yeah.
back to the point that we're leading stuff here,
Yeah.
that's why I say the study comes.
I,
So what's wrong with a brother asking a question, giving you the meat, and you need help with it?
It was not intended to be help.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know the particular situation. I'm going to guess it was meant in a way that was not lifting anything up. But what I mostly want to talk about is what we're looking at when we might have disagreement about what is right or wrong. And that's the example I gave with none of this is going to be salvation based. I don't think any of this is going to take anybody's salvation away. In my opinion, the only way I think you can lose your salvation is to completely reject it. Normally you reject it over time through engaging in sin, but it's not necessarily going to fall on one particular thing, which is when I gave the example of alcohol. I asked, how many of you say it's okay? Half of the 9 answers I got, 3 of you said no, 4 of you said yes, and then 2 of you said, I don't know. I mean, surely there's a right answer there, right? So why do we have such differing opinions on it? Huh? Yes, but is there a biblical answer for it? Oh, we're gonna talk about that when we get to that particular section. Hey, I'm not your grandchildren. We know that perfect obedience isn't possible, but we do live for the one who was perfect. We do know that there is a standard that even though we cannot perfectly follow it, we try to mimic it to the best possible ability that we can. And the question that I got asked a lot in China is, how do I know that I'm on the right path? And the best answer I can get is something I heard Harry say in his speech he gave a second ago is, are you trying? So many people just give up. Are you trying? Jesus himself used 3 different moral motifs in his teaching. The first of those is that God reigns supreme, and it is our responsibility to obey. That God is the creator of the heavens and the earth. There is nobody above God, and that we, as those who believe in God, or not even just those who believe in God, but even in those who don't, still have the responsibility to obey him. Second of those is our obligations. We have our obligations as being children of God. This goes back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, that we were created in his image, and we have responsibilities of those who bear that image. And that those who have become disciples will move into a teacher or role model responsibility. As Christians, we don't expect you, when you become a Christian, we don't expect you to know it all. In fact, in the beginning, we expect you to get a lot of it wrong, which is okay. People are going to make mistakes. You learn from your mistakes. But we do expect as a Christian that you, as you grow in faith, you continue to learn, and then you model it to the next generation. So when we look how Jesus is taught, Jesus mostly focused on 3 different groups of people. Who knows what those 3 different groups of people were? Well, mostly. He talked to, number 1, those who expected to move into the teacher and role model. That would be his disciples / followers. And we could see that he often taught differently to those that he taught. To the everyday people, the people that would come to hear him, the crowds, often those that wanted something from him or saw that he was popular, or maybe they actually liked what he was saying but didn't necessarily want to follow him. Oh, and of course, the third group of people, the group of people that I'm not sure if he was harder on this group of people or if he was harder on his disciples, but that would be the religious teachers, the ones that this is God, you follow God, you claim to follow God, you have a responsibility to obey God, and you're not obeying God.
Well, I think it's harder on them because like you go
I mean, he was,
if you go to Matthew chapter 23,
he was really, really harsh on them, but I don't know if he was harder on them. And that's what I'm not sure. Harsh and harder are two different things. He certainly had more expectations of his. Like I have, and I think about it with my sons versus my students. I'm a lot harsher on my sons because they should know better. But sometimes I'm harder on my students because they are older. Or at least you guys aren't my students, but you listen to me teach. So some things are hard. We understand justification by faith through grace. None of our works save us. None of our guidelines save us. There is only one path to salvation, and it says it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how well you obeyed the law. In fact, according to the world's standards, you can be the best person in the world, but if you don't do this, you are not getting the reward. And that is faith. You got to have faith. In Hebrews, as I'm going to talk a little bit about in my lesson on Sunday, says you cannot have obedience without faith. Verses chapter 11, verses 6 and 7. However, we also understand that Paul says in Ephesians that though we are saved by grace, we are still created with a purpose. And what is that purpose? Well, Paul says, for good works. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8, 9, and 10, you were saved by grace, but you were created for good works. And that, we see that all the way at the beginning. Genesis chapter 1 is coming up a lot today. It's that earworm. I'm just mostly focusing on that. But it does help that the Old Testament, as opposed to the New Testament, is largely about Christian living. The Old Testament was about rules and regulations, where the Old Testament is more about here is what you should be doing. Even if you can't follow it, it's still a general good guideline. Ephesians chapter 5. What is Ephesians chapter 5, beginning of chapter 6, largely about? And specifically moving on to chapter 6, what is he talking about? Children of parents. Husbands, love your wives. Wives, be obedient to your husband. Children, obey your parents. Yes. Fathers, do not your children. That's good Christian living. In fact, that's not even a controversial statement. Well, maybe the husband, maybe the wives be obedient. That's probably the most controversial part of that. But I'm sure even the world would agree with those standards. And they're largely taken out of the code of Hammurabi. I always want to say one, and I feel like I'm saying the name of that gorilla. So the New Testament focuses on Christian living. God sees it as a matter of great importance because he says loving him means you're going to obey his commandments. If you knew who God was, if you knew what it was that he was giving you, if you believed it with all of your heart, surely you would be obedient. Or at the very least, surely you would try to be obedient.
You use that as an example, John Paul.
Mm-hmm.
You love someone, you're going to do your very best for them.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to try to step out of line. You're not doing it because you were told to do it. You're doing it because of love.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that we miss. Sometimes we say we love people. Jesus, like Jesus says, how can you say you love me who you haven't seen, and hate your brother who you haven't
Mm-hmm.
seen? How can you say that you love someone and you see them in need and not provide for them? You've got goods, you've got things that you can share with someone. Why don't you do
Mm-hmm.
all these things? So I think, as we come back and
Love requires sacrifice.
that's exactly right. And then when we say that we love our wives, okay, and our wives say that they love their husbands, it is demonstrated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's one of the things that we miss out on about loving God. It's saying, it's like, I know I talk a lot, but it's like when it says,
You do?
God says, when he says, when they reject you, Samuel,
Yeah.
they're not
Rejecting you, they're rejecting.
rejecting you.
Yeah.
And so that's one, what's your verse there, Deuteronomy 6:4?
Mm-hmm.
That's what that love comes into.
Yeah. Yes, Miss Miley. No, I was going to say that really, I mean, love does require you to give up what you might be holding you back. Even if whether you like it or not. I do laundry for Rachel because I love her. I hate to do laundry. It's the worst. Yeah, it's one of the reasons that you cooked for your husband. It's the reason that we work together in a partnership. And it's the reason that we don't give up, because every time things get hard. Go ahead, Miley. That one? This one? Well, when I say I don't have an answer to it, what I mean is I don't think my answer is good enough. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, because you have, well, if you knew, so the closest I've ever come to an answer here is that it either falls to one of two things, and I'm not satisfied with either one of these answers, is that either it's because you don't know, or not that you don't know, it's just that you're worried that you will have to experience a pain of death, and that alone is scary, because we look at death, and even from a non-Christian perspective, we look at death as being a very painful and finite thing. But the other thing is it's just lack of faith. I don't want to talk. I know you want to talk about this one, but if you want to talk about this one, I do not want to talk about this one right now.
I just want to put a verse out there, and it's 1 John chapter 5, verse 13.
Yeah.
Where John says, I write these things that you may know that you have eternal life.
Oh.
If you believe in the name of the Son of God.
Yeah.
If we believe, we can know.
Yeah, I agree that you as a Christian should have assurance in your salvation. The Bible does promises that. And the only reason that you might not feel like you don't have assurance is through a lack of faith. But the answer to lack of faith is a reason that you might fear death is never really kind of sat well with me. And the other one doesn't sit well with me, even though I've seen more of that in practice. My son, when he wanted to give a shot, I'm like, it will be over so quick. Just do it. And he turned what should have been less than a second into a 20-minute process. He made the whole thing worse because he was afraid of that little sting than just getting it over with. So neither one of these particular answers, I see all of you, no, put your hands down. We're not going to talk about this one. No, put your hands down.
No, I like to follow. If he died
Okay. No. All right. See, this is why I did not want anybody talking, because I'm trying to move on to a subject that is not important right now. We will talk more about this, I promise. Fine. Go ahead, Miss Ernestine. Mm. And maybe that's true for you. I don't even necessarily, for a lot of these, I don't even necessarily think that there's one single answer. I do think that there is a right answer when it comes to the alcohol and some of the other things we're going to talk about, but
I have a friend of mine, she's got.
no.
I want to say this, when my friend was diagnosed with cancer, to me, that was the best sister in Christ that I've heard. She says, I am in a win-win situation. She says, if I die, I know where I'm going. She says, if I live, I'm going to still be with my family. And so, when you come back, the person, says correct answer. I think the correct answer is being obedient to God, like what Jesus read there. We can know that. I think as far as death, as far as when we're young, we have a family, we're afraid to die.
Yeah.
Okay? But now that we have gotten older, our kids are grown, we have our grandkids are grown, and then we see, it's like my mom said, my mom, God bless me to see all my children come back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's what we look at. I think, as far as our children, they're going to have to stand before God. Ernestine, you cannot save your children. Okay? So the reality of it is, your children are going to have to stand before God and give an account for their actions. Okay? You're not going to answer for them. And the Bible is very clear on that. So,
All right. Thank you, Harry. No. I'm finishing now. No, you can talk about it after I'm done. All right. So, as we just illustrated through this one particular question, is that some things are very, very hard. And even there may not be a particular answer that fits everybody. I don't know if it's because my age or my experience or my lack of knowledge that I don't have what is a satisfying answer in my head, or even if, or it's because that there may not be a good or correct answer here. When Harry gave the example of the Bible giving us the answers, I believe that's true. But I also believe that it's true that it gives us to the answers to the things that are very important and not necessarily things that we need to worry about. But we as humans, we like to do a lot of worrying. And I feel like if we follow Jesus, if we were able to not worry, as he tells us, that death wouldn't even be a concern at all. Anyway, we're going to continue this next week. So we're going to talk about God's character and how it helps set the moral standard. Thank you all for your great discussion.